Um, I want to start with kind of back to 2001. And I think we had, as we discussed, you were selling back in 2001. Can you help me understand with like compare and contrast the last kind of 12 years of selling into this? Everything's going up. I mean, it's been an amazing time to be a salesperson. There have been incredible new technologies coming on the market. There have been new markets that have been opening up. The world as we know it has gone online. Selling over Zoom, over whatever we're on today, Riverside, is so much more acceptable than back in the day when I started. And I had a territory and I drove around in a truck and I had to visit people in person, or I had to, hit them up and cold call to my territory that printed off on a sheet of paper from a Microsoft Dynamics, system from the early or late 90s. Things have certainly changed. I'm curious
for the better.
For the better, for sure. I think the point we're at now is like a little blip. It's a bit of a downturn. It's certainly not as easy. But the markets have gotten bigger. Help me understand, what was it like for you selling in 2001? Because, coming out of the bubble, coming out of so many different things, it was it must have been a challenging, crazy year.
Well, between the dot-com burst and 9/11, those were very difficult times. I guess the funny story would be my father used to print AAA maps for me because he was so worried about me traveling through these tiny towns by myself and not having a cell phone at first. That did come soon thereafter. And so just learning to read a map, going through that process, yes, it was challenging. But I think the biggest challenge was I got married in 2000, and that was kind of the start of the bust. And I came back from my honeymoon the day after and found out that my husband's organization was dissolving. So we had just had the happiest times in our lives. And they even sent us an amazing gift basket. And he is in HR. So he hired all the people for this organization. He had to go lay them all off and, deal with that emotion that comes out of it. And I certainly felt that similar kind of emotion and frustration in the sales process in my world, and dealing with organizations who are also experiencing that kind of bust. So the empathy in that process is something that I've carried over into today, of being that person that's not just about calling for the sale or calling for the next step in the process, but actually listening to the person who's on the line. Certainly the old school phones with the, curly cord back then, but, really listening. And one of the most poignant memories I have from that time was actually after 9/11. I was on a plane that day. It was quite traumatic time. And coming right back into the office and getting back to my cold calls. Of course, I had Manhattan territory. And I had so many conversations where people were staring at the hole, at the smoke, and thinking about it could have been them. And I would go home. I lived in DC at the time. I lived very close to Pentagon, looking at the smoke every day for months. So constant reminders of that time period. And I realized that listening skills were critical. Being able to let that executive on the line process what was going on. It built a relationship that did not produce a sale immediately, but it did later. They remembered that I listened. They remembered that I wasn't just trying to check the box in my sales process or get that phone call, that next thing scheduled. And that really stuck with me, I think, throughout the process as we hit some of those future ups and downs, even in 2008.
I mean, I remember 2008 myself, and I think I've told the story on the podcast before, so I'll keep it brief, but I was selling kitchen cabinets to high rises, and I had locked in 327 units, $1.5 million sale. I was getting paid a very low draw off future commissions and 10%. So here I am, fairly young age, is my first like real field sales role, expecting a, $150K commission check, and watching our company go bankrupt before I could before we could deliver on that project. It was, yeah. And then having to go and find something else. And it was, I mean, it's sort of like being a wedding planner to like a couple who just called the wedding off.
Yeah.
And you're like, so anything we can do here?
Right. Is there anything left?
No, there's no wedding, so we don't need a wedding planner.
Yeah.
And I imagine so many people in so many different industries, it's probably made its way through the system now. And now we're kind of settling into this new normal.
This man's a good question about that. And how did your manager react? I'm sure they were counting on that too.
I had a contentious relationship with my manager. Was the owner of the company. It was him and his wife, and the two of them own the company. I don't want to say their names because but I'd say the husband was working on bigger deals, and so he didn't care. And the wife was more the operations, and so her and I had butted heads because I'm a sales guy. I'm just trying to get a deal done. I'm trying to, and so her and I had butted heads. And when they told me that they weren't going to be around to like fulfill the contract, because you're planning for a year out, like a deal for a year out, and we didn't have money to buy the materials for the contract. And so I was like, well, we're not going to be able to fulfill, so I know I'm not going to get this commission. I decided to quit. I didn't give my notice to the owners. I went to my customer first and said, hey, we're not going to be able to fulfill. I wanted to give you all the heads up that I'm going to be stepping away from this company because we're not going to be able to fulfill. Here's I know you know who these people are, but like, here are the people that I believe are going to be able to get you through this, and this is what I'd recommend. And so I gave the news to, I think it was like 22 or 23 or something, and I was talking to the owner of the construction company, I was shaking, and then went back to my company and quit, and they were very angry. Yeah. 2 months later, they were out of business. So like, writing was on the wall. So that 150K was imaginary. It still hurt to lose though.
I could see that. But what I'm hearing though is that value of customer first, right? Making sure that you're keeping your relationships at front of mind, and that you're keeping the needs of the people the problems you're trying to solve top of mind, right? And it's something about, in this topic of resilience, of having strong grounding. What are your values? What do you care about? Why do you come to work every day? Because that becomes a touchstone you come back to in difficult times. And without that, if it's just about the commission check, if it's just about the money, it is not enough to get you through tough times, because as you know, sales is the biggest roller coaster. You have good days, bad days. Some deals you've been waiting on forever don't come through. So having something, whether that's being customer focused, whether that's having high integrity, whether that's focused on being service oriented, great collaborator, those are things you can come back to during hard times. And for me, it was certainly empathy for my clients and some of the things they were going through, and we were going through simultaneously.